here's Brody Brazil.
Okay, let's talk about the A's and their recent maneuvers, and specifically this sudden and unpredictable shift to the Tropicana Hotel site. Everybody's getting confused. Tropicana, wait, that's where the first site was, the land purchase agreement of 49 acres. No, that was the Wild Wild West site on the corner of Tropicana and Dean Martin Drive. Now we're talking about on the Strip, the old Tropicana Hotel, which is barely still standing. Bally's, who owns it, they have plans to redo something there. And coincidentally, it's not the first time we've heard the A's and Bally's and Tropicana all mentioned in the same sentence. But I want to go over some of the finer points. This news broke yesterday as I record this, and it's a complete pivot from plan number one. I mean, when that came out on April 19th, 49 acres, west of I-15, west of the Strip, west of T-Mobile Arena, north of Allegiant Stadium, it made a lot of sense, quite honestly. It was away from the traffic and the bustle of the Strip, and it kind of created a stadium district, a sports district, if you will. And look, this location is not far away. Heck, it's literally on the same street, just actually on the Strip. More on that in a second. But it's interesting how quick that first binding agreement we heard about, how it went away, how it was nullified. My understanding was, and I always knew this, there would be the clause that if the A's could not secure the public money for this ballpark, those 49 acres, that then the purchase would go away. But they didn't even really go through the motions of getting public money before they said, nope, actually, we're not in this site all the way. We're not in this purchase. So binding apparently used loosely in the definition. In retrospect, I mean, there's no two ways about it. It seemed like that was the for sure plan number 1A, and now it's off the table entirely. But as they move to this Tropicana Hotel site and they work with Bally's, I mean, this is a big deal for two reasons. Number one, it's an on-the-strip location, which comes with its challenges, and the A's estimate that their attendance would be 70-30. 70% locals, 30% tourists. So certainly when you're on the Strip, you are catering to those tourists. But the 70% having to commute in to the Strip, find parking, find accessibility, ingress, egress, the airport's right near there. It's already a busy situation to begin with. And what about the months of April when there's also a Golden Knights game going on? Or how about closer to the fall months, when there might be a Raiders football game right around the corner? It's going to get very busy around that southern side of the Strip very quickly. But the other part about this is now the A's, with this agreement they've got in place reportedly with Bally's, it's finally partnering with a casino, a powerhouse in southern Nevada, somebody and an entity in Bally's that's got some influence, maybe politically, maybe to get the wheels in motion. As much as this is about the location, it's all about the A's partnership with Bally's. Now, in doing this pivot from site number one to site number two, time has been ticking this entire time. Let's be honest about that. But the A's kind of sat on site number one, publicly announced, for about 3 weeks before they pivoted yesterday to site number two. It brings a couple things up. Number one, lawmakers and politicians who will be deciding on public money, are they a bit confused on the change of plans, or are they going to get that explained to them? Probably at a certain point. Will they hold it against anybody that there's been two plans in a couple weeks? Maybe not, but it is interesting. Also it's time ticking away. There's only 20-something days left as you watch this in the legislative session. Either way, the A's are going to need public money, whether it was the old site or the new site. That's probably why they didn't submit any type of language. That we talk about the concrete language, probably why they didn't submit any information, because they didn't really have, their sites 100% set on the first location now as they're on to the second one. Let's talk about some numbers at this new site, the Tropicana site. Public money. The original ask was going to be, we heard, about $500 million of either a tax district that gets created or tax credits. We also heard about that. Or we also heard about immunity to sales tax or property tax on the ballpark location. Now, that was the $500 million for the first site. Again, I wish I could give you more details, but nobody really knows what the A's are asking for. It was just going to be valued around $500 million. Well, now in site number 2, they're saying that that number is going to go down to $395 million, which sounds a lot cheaper because there's a 3 as the first number instead of a 5. In reality, you're basically $400 million. You've reduced it by $100 million, and my guess is, that's my second point here, the A's were able to do this because they're not going to purchase any land at the Tropicana Hotel site. They're actually going to rent it for 50 years to the tune of $10.5 million a year for rent on these 9 acres. Let's go back to the public money part of it. It's still a pretty large ask, and we don't even know if that's a minimum amount, the absolute maximum amount. What if the sales taxes, they can't match what the bonds cost? Who would be the ultimate backstop for that? We don't know. There are a lot of questions still about public money, the financing of that, the rules of that. But that's what the A's and their lobbyists and the lawmakers, that's what they are all working on. It just needs to be clear that, sure, $395 sounds a lot less than $500 million. This is still a significant ask by the A's to the state of Nevada and Clark County. But yeah, that's the other thing you need to know is that this site would not require a land purchase. The A's would be renting this land at the Tropicana site, which again is only a 9-acre site. 34 total acres at the Tropicana Hotel, but only a 9-acre site. Now, that's interesting because Target Field recently, a beautiful ballpark for the Minnesota Twins, they say it's on an 8.5-acre footprint, which is extremely tiny. But they also don't tell you that there are 2 additional acres of the ballpark that actually hang over a road and train track. So it's more like 10.5, but even that, a bit cramped. How about Oracle Park in San Francisco? For all of you watching here in Northern California, you've likely been to a Giants game, and you know that Oracle Park, they use every square foot possible. I mean, that ballpark and the way right field is with McCovey Cove, they really shoved a really nice ballpark into a small space. They used a small space very effectively. That's 12.5 acres. So think about 3 fewer acres, and that's what the A's are trying to do at the Tropicana site on the Las Vegas Strip. It seems like a challenge. 34 total acres, 9 for the ballpark. Anyway, it's going to be challenging. And other ballparks with like 9-acre sites, Fenway Park, Wrigley Field, no ballpark that has any kind of surrounding amenities. You would imagine that that's what Bally's is going to do with the Tropicana Hotel. By the way, they're tearing it all down, rebuilding it. But maybe Bally's will be the one building all of the surrounding, maybe commercial, residential, whatever's going to surround this ballpark. But all of this, and at the same time, we still do not have any legislation introduced yet. As I record this, there are 26 days left until the end of the current session. These sessions in the state of Nevada, they're held for 120 days at the start of every other year. So if this one expires, that's officially it until 2025, but there can be a special session requested. Now, everybody that I've heard from says they would prefer to not have to do a special session for this. That being established, the Raiders and Allegiant Stadium, they had a special session to get all of that approved for their project. So there is precedent there. It has happened before. The preference would be to not go that route. So that means we really have a week or 2 left before this needs to be introduced. I say that because it needs time once introduced to be discussed, to be figured out, and ultimately to be decided on or not for an assembly bill in the state of Nevada. But at this point, it's important you know that the original site never had any legislation introduced. This current one now obviously doesn't. The change of plans may have set that process back a little bit. Okay, in terms of the Tropicana Hotel site with the timeline and phases of the project, They say they're still aiming for 2027 to open up a ballpark there, but they're now also admitting that an opening could be pushed back into 2028, which also brings into question, if the team is officially moving out of Oakland after 2024, where do you play for 25, 26, and now 27? That's a couple years of being in a temporary spot. The plan is to demolish the Tropicana Hotel, which, by the way, if you're going to get moving on this, I don't know how far out people reserve rooms, but like, we're getting to the point that the Tropicana Hotel would need to come down quickly. Demolish the hotel if you're really going to break ground in 2024, build a stadium first, and then go back and build a 1,500-room hotel on the site. Or maybe the hotel would be done close to the opening of the stadium. Who knows? But that's kind of the big picture estimation here. Okay, let's start closing it out with this. How do the A's actually get to this project? What makes this a reality? Two big requirements. Number one, public funding by the state of Nevada and by Clark County. It requires bonds. It requires an assembly bill. It requires at least $395 million of public money in tax credits or tax deductions or tax immunity, whatever it is. It's going to require public funding for the A's and this site and this project. So that remains to be seen and determined. The other thing, which seems maybe easier of these two, is Major League Baseball relocation approval. Owners across the board need to vote 75% yes in favor of relocation before it actually happens. Owners across the board will also see all these plans, how it's been established. The A's are up against the January 2024 deadline for the end of revenue sharing. So the A's have to and want to get this all squared away, presented to baseball by the end of 23, so that by 2024, they can get their way with Major League Baseball. But relocation still has to be approved eventually to the tune of 75%. We still don't know about the waiving of a $500 million relocation fee. The commissioner, Rob Manfred, has promised that. But these two things in tandem would mean the end of the A's in Oakland. So that's as much as I can tell you right now about this shift to the Tropicana Hotel site. Shouts out, by the way, to the Nevada Independent, by the way. They've done such a tremendous job covering all of the A's maneuvering, both in Carson City, where the legislature meets, and also in southern Nevada, where the A's have, had their boots on the ground for many months now in trying to determine, which routes they're going to pursue. The Nevada Independent has broken all of these big stories, so credit to them on helping us understand the situation at hand. Okay, that's it. Thumbs up on this video since you watched here all the way to the end. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel so that I can see you next time.